Imagine walking out to your garden one morning and finding a metal stake jammed into your flower bed with a tag on it that says property line. No warning, no knock on the door. Just a quiet, calculated move by someone you trusted. This is the story of a woman named Dana, a forged survey, and the neighbor who thought he could steal her land with a piece of paper. What he didn't expect was karma keeping better records than he did. Dana lived in a quiet residential community, the kind of place with trimmed lawns, friendly waves, and a homeowners association that mostly stayed out of everyone's business. She'd bought her house 5 years earlier, a modest 2-story with a small garden she'd built herself, stone by stone, weekend by weekend. It was hers, every inch of it documented and paid for. Next door lived a man named Colton. He'd been on the HOA board for almost a decade, the guy who knew every rule in the community handbook and knew exactly how far he could stretch them. Homeowners respected him publicly. Privately, a few called him the landlord nobody elected. Dana had always kept things polite with him. That politeness was about to be tested. One Saturday morning, Dana noticed small orange flags planted along her fence line, the kind surveyors use. She hadn't called anyone. She hadn't seen any trucks, just flags quietly appearing like they'd always been there. She walked next door and asked Colton about it. He waved it off, saying it was just routine maintenance, nothing to worry about. Dana let it go. For now. 2 weeks later, an envelope showed up in her mailbox. No friendly note, just a formal notice, stating that her fence encroached 3 feet onto the neighboring property, and that she was required to correct the violation within 30 days. The letter didn't need to say whose complaint it was. She already knew. That night, Dana pulled out the thick folder from her home purchase, deed, title report, and the original survey completed back when she closed on the house. She spread it all across her kitchen table. She compared her original survey to the one Colton had submitted to the HOA. The numbers didn't match, not by a small margin, by feet. Somehow on paper her boundary had quietly shifted. Land doesn't move. Paperwork does. Dana brought both surveys to the HOA board meeting, expecting a fair review. What she didn't fully register, until she sat down, was that Colton wasn't just a neighbor filing a complaint. He was sitting at the head of the table. The board president told her the new survey was properly filed and stamped, and unless she had a certified rebuttal, the association had to go with the documentation on record. Dana looked around the room. Nobody argued. Nobody even made eye contact. A week later, a second letter arrived, this time with a fine attached, and a hard deadline to move her fence back onto her side of the newly drawn line. The line that somehow kept creeping further into her yard. A retired neighbor named Priya stopped Dana on her morning walk and quietly told her she wasn't the first one this happened to. 2 houses down, 3 years back. Same story, same new survey. They just never fought it. Dana thanked her and quietly decided she wasn't going to be the next name on that list. Dana contacted an independent, licensed land surveyor, someone with no connection to the HOA, no connection to Colton, and no reason to bend the numbers either way. A few days later, the surveyor called with unusual news. Her fence hadn't moved an inch, but the document filed against her, the stamp on it didn't match any license number in the regional database. The surveyor explained it plainly. The survey company Colton had used wasn't a registered licensed firm at all. It was, at best, informal measurements dressed up to look official, complete with a logo, a signature, and a stamp that meant nothing legally. A fake badge doesn't make someone a police officer, and a fake stamp doesn't make a survey real. Dana could have marched over and confronted Colton on the spot. Instead, she did something smarter. She stayed quiet, gathered every document, every email, every inconsistency, and built her case like a brick wall, one brick at a time. Dana formally requested a full HOA hearing. Not a hallway conversation, not a quick board vote, but an official review on the record, with her independent survey submitted as evidence in advance. Word travels fast in a small community. By the time the hearing was scheduled, Colton had already tried twice to get it postponed, citing scheduling conflicts that, oddly, kept appearing right before every proposed date. The night of the hearing, the room was fuller than usual. Dana laid both surveys side by side on the table, along with the surveyor's written statement confirming the second company held no valid license. This wasn't a dispute about a few feet of grass. It was about a fake document being used to fine a homeowner and take part of her legally purchased land. For the first time, a board member who'd stayed quiet through every prior meeting raised her hand, and asked to see that license verification in writing, saying if this was what it looked like. They had a much bigger problem than one fence. After a tense back and forth, the board voted, not along old loyalties but based on the evidence in front of them. The fine was reversed, and to settle it permanently, they ordered a third, fully neutral survey, paid for by the association itself. 2 weeks later, the results came back. Dana's original boundary, the one from her closing documents, the one that had never actually moved, was confirmed as accurate down to the inch. But the story didn't end there. Priya's earlier warning stuck with the board, and someone started digging. It turned out Dana's case wasn't isolated. At least 2 other boundary disputes, over the years traced back to the same fake survey company and the same board member pushing them through. Facing a formal ethics review and mounting questions from his own neighbors, Colton resigned from the HOA board before the investigation even concluded. He didn't move away. He didn't need to. In a small community, reputation is its own kind of sentence, and his had quietly, permanently changed. He spent years using the rules to control everyone else. In the end, it was the smallest, most boring detail, a missing license number, that brought the whole thing down. Dana kept her fence exactly where it always was. But more than that, she kept something harder to fine or file paperwork against her peace of mind, and her documentation filed away for good. If there's one thing this story leaves behind, it's this. Never assume paperwork is correct just because it looks official. Keep your original records. Ask questions. And when something feels off, get a second, independent opinion before you accept someone else's version of the truth. This story is for illustrative purposes and does not constitute legal advice.